Eric, you might as well stay down here since you represented
Yes.
first. So let me introduce him. So Erik Perrohe is our TAP, of course, and he first fell in love with photography about the age of 4 when he took his first photo after an arduous hike up the Misty Trail in Yosemite. He grew up reading National Geographic and Life magazines and was interested in becoming a professional photographer. When he was in the 7th grade, he was introduced to a computer. These days, computers are... Pardon me?
Somebody just said big mistake. Yes, probably to be introduced to a computer.
These days, computers are commonplace and students are taught computer skills from a very early age. But this was back in the early 70s when computers were quite rare, and Erik had the good fortune of being included in an experimental program to see if children could learn anything about computers. It was like a duck to water, and after a very brief introduction, he taught himself how to program by reading the manual that came with the computer. Erik would code his programs in binary and by hand and punch them in through the front panel. Has anybody ever seen one of those? We practically weren't even born yet. Erik went on to study electronics and work for many different companies as a programmer. These days, Erik has retired from computer programming, although he still occasionally does it as a hobby. Instead of computers, Erik prefers to focus on photography and art. Erik is currently learning how to draw and paint. He also works part-time as an audio recording engineer and streaming video producer. As Erik's mother approached the end of her life, Erik became her primary caretaker and was with her on the day she passed. So what we're going to do tonight is have the 3 shows without questions and answers in between, and do the question and answer at the end of the program, where you can save up all those questions, and you might want to take notes. Thanks, Erik.
Okay, here I am. Here you are. Great to see everybody. So I'm starting to get comfortable standing up in front of people, but as many of you know, because many of the people here have been up here doing presentations, and it's a little different having all these people looking at you, but here we are. Okay, so I wanted to do a little bit of background research on this whole business of death and dying and finances and such. As Lynn mentioned earlier, this whole thing grew out of a conversation that I had with Lynn about all of the dramatic changes that occur when someone dies, and especially when you don't have any advance warning that any of this is going to happen. But I was thinking about life in general and how you're born and then you go through a whole cycle and eventually you leave. And I thought about a merry-go-round. That's what occurred to me. And you have this spinning around cycle of where you get on the merry-go-round, you go around for a while, and eventually you get off again. And I just thought it was a really nice metaphor. So I made a mad dash trip out to photograph the merry-go-round on the waterfront. Unfortunately, they'd already shut it down for the night, but at least I was still able to take a picture of it. Yeah, you can kill all the lights now, and we'll go from there. These are some pictures of my mom. And this was an exhibit at the art museum by, I think it's pronounced Kusama, and she's a polka dot lady. And This was I believe it was 2017 or 2018. She passed in 2022. So she was still in pretty good condition at this point. But it's quite an exhibit. And the idea here is they give you a dot and you go put it on the wall or the furniture or something. And this is my aunt's funeral. And the thing is, this is a Western style, Hollywood style, if you will, funeral. This is your classic American funeral. And there's an awful lot of different ways of approaching it. And one of the things about this approach is that it is very expensive. But my uncle did really well for himself in business, so they were able to afford this type of a funeral. But many of us cannot, and so that's a significant consideration. And I'll be talking about some other options in a few minutes. But this is, it is what it is. And, when people leave, that's quite a difficult thing to deal with. Now, my mom is an ordained minister. In fact, she spent some time at this church as an assistant. And so she's giving the service. And again, this is our way of doing things. We put something special with the deceased, and we say our goodbyes. And did Cynthia make it?
Yeah.
Ah, great. Okay. And this picture was at the end of the funeral. I saw this, and I knew then that it wasn't going to be very many more years before she was gone. And people try to make all kinds of predictions, but none of the predictions are ever accurate. They really can't predict how long someone's going to be around. But she was fading, and I saw the flowers, and I saw her, and I chose that specific composition. I waited as they walked until I had what I wanted for that. Now, the fascinating thing is the tradition of burying people. This is a documentary called The Cave of Unknown Bones. And over 250,000 years ago, they found a burial site with multiple people having been buried there. And it's in a cave that's extremely inaccessible. So humans, well, here's the other interesting thing, but people have been interested in how to deal with the deceased and speculating about the afterlife for a very, very, very long time. But the other thing that's fascinating about this wasn't Homo sapiens. This was a related hominoid race that was a branch off of a common ancestor. So Homo sapiens went this way. I forgot who these guys were, but there's all these different branches off of it. And in the course of doing this research, I came across another interesting little tidbit too. They've been, they've been studying the genetics of all these different races. It's extraordinary that they've been able to recover genetic material from someone buried 250,000 years ago. But they have been able to do that. And they have now concluded that Homo sapiens are the result of interbreeding between Neanderthals and these various other races. And our genetic contains Neanderthal genes and whatever this race was, I forget who they are, but we're a polyglot. And that was fascinating, but I didn't really have time to get too far into the article. So now I wanted to, that is actually kind of out of sequence, but it's all right. The idea here is that there's a lot of different ways of approaching this, and Native Americans, every tribe is potentially different, but a lot of tribes have things that are somewhat in common. And of course, in modern days, they do the modern Western thing, but a long time ago, they used to do something called a sky burial, where they would build a platform and put the body up above. And I just included that because it was a beautiful. And that's some friends. That's my very good friend Arnold, and that was a standard cremation kind of thing. So these days they're basically following the Western traditions. But the Egyptians is where we got most of our contemporary practices from. They were doing embalming, they were doing the burials. And we just continued that. The embalming that we do today is derived directly from the embalming practices that the Egyptians were doing. So people have been at this for thousands of years. And over in India, they did a form of cremation. They would build this huge bonfire and put the man, usually it's the man goes first. And then they have this horrific tradition, which is now banned, but still sometimes practiced apparently, of where the woman then jumps onto the bonfire and joins her husband, but being burned to death, that's a horrible thing. So this is more of India, and let's see, this is where the other photo was supposed to have been. But anyway, this is John T. Williams, and back in, this is a memorial that they had for him later, but he was a wood carver and homeless, basically, but everybody knew him, really nice guy. He liked to carve with a pocket knife and make totem poles and such. And he was walking down the sidewalk one day, carving away. He was also hard of hearing. And a rookie cop sees him. And I'm sure the rookie cop had visions of saving us from some mad terrorist with a knife. But that wasn't actually the case. And unfortunately, no one explained to the rookie cop. They didn't orient him to who the regulars were and such. So he went out there and ordered John to stop. And he didn't stop because he's hard of hearing. And he kept walking. And the cop opened fire, shot him in the back 3 times, and then shot him in the front a couple more times for good measure. And then the review board said that the cop had acted in accordance with his training and let him off the hook. So you really got to wonder about that training. But this is more of that. So totem pole is another way of approaching the memorial. I call this one broken hand, broken heart. And this is still at the memorial. And I think these are probably father and daughter, but I don't really know, but they were standing up on this stage, the same stage that the other lady was standing on. This is still at the John Williams Memorial. And this is to do with grief, because we feel it with grief. And I'm happy to announce that Cynthia Zink is with us today. She's a professional grief counselor, and she'll be participating in the question and answer session. And I asked her for some advice about what to say about grief. But now these are pictures of people grieving, basically. And we have to deal with it some way. So people find different ways of getting past the grief, because it leaves a hole in their heart. But the other aspect of that too is that we have to let go of the grief, because you can't just hang on to grief forever. But back when I was a kid, people would dress in black, and I remember asking my mom, why is that lady dressed in black? And so they would spend an entire year wearing nothing but black clothes. And I'm not sure how healthy that is, but that is one approach that they have. This is her brother, her brother's wife. Aunt Murray's. And these are all cousins, basically. And this picture is really hard to look at, but you'll see the contrast there. And I remember my first funeral that I went to, I was just a kid, and it does not compute. It doesn't mean anything until you're older and you've actually had some experience. You just can't even comprehend what's going on. And I felt that this picture portrayed that contrast. And then there's a real crisis in this country because there's so many people in need of care, and there's no money to pay for any of this. So, I was my mom's caretaker, and the first time around we thought she was going to pass. She actually rallied, and she did really well. She stayed around for another year. After the point that we thought she was going to die, she stayed around for another year. And that is largely because she got really good medical care. But one thing she really was limited by, she couldn't get out of her chair without assistance. And that was a big problem. But I got her this chair, and that gave her back her independence. Now she could get up and down on her own. So the chair worked out great. This is more about the fact that we have to have caretakers for this. And by golly, I had a lot more things I was going to say, but I think that works pretty well. So there's a lot of different traditions. Wait, the most important part, finances. Okay, so she was on hospice, but they said that, after 6 months, they said, well, she's too healthy. She can't be on hospice because she isn't dying. So they took her off hospice, and she kept going for basically about 6 more months. The thing is, when you get on hospice, they take care of everything. It's pretty amazing. They pay for the medicine. They have a nurse come in and take care of the person, do checkups on them. They have a physical therapist come in. That all was really wonderful. They also have hospice volunteers who will come in and just be with the patient. And that sounds great in theory. And in fact, my mom was a hospice volunteer for many years. And she was very reliable. And she would go and spend time. And what that does is it gives the caretaker a chance to be away. Like if you want to go grocery shopping or something, but you have to have round-the-clock assistance, then having a volunteer hospice worker there is a good thing. That gives you a chance to get away. What I experienced, though, is a complete lack of any reliability. they would not show up, or they'd call it all together, they'd call at the last minute and say, oh, well, I got this other thing I have to do, I can't come. And so, so I gave up. It wasn't worth trying to schedule them and have them not show up. So, so that basically didn't work. But at the same time, though, this was during COVID, so that probably had something to do with it. The other thing that happens is when you're on hospice and the person passes away, at that point it's expected, so you just call them and then they make the arrangements as far as legal stuff and whatever. But since she wasn't on hospice at the time that she passed, that complicated things. All of a sudden we had to interact with the police and the fire department and all kinds of stuff. Fire department was absolutely wonderful. The police was really great too. But keep in mind, when that cop comes out there, he has to investigate to make sure that there's no indication of foul play. When you're on hospice, they don't do that because it's expected that you're going to be passing away. But not being on hospice, they have to do due diligence and make sure that there's no indication of foul play. She passed on a Sunday, and 2 days later, the death certificate hit the system. And all of a sudden, I was locked out of everything. Now, I'd been paying her bills and stuff through her online bank account. Can't access the bank account. Can't access her medical records. Can't access her insurance. Everything frozen. And that is a huge, huge problem that caught us totally by surprise. You have to plan in advance because the bills keep coming in. But suddenly you have no access to the bank account so that you can pay anything. And the Social Security also stops. So your income stops, your bank is frozen, your medical records are suddenly inaccessible. I was in the middle of a dispute with the hospital over some charges. All of a sudden, I can't access any of those medical records. Make hard copies. Online stuff is wonderful. Here comes the hook.
Other speakers.
But anyway, you need to be aware that this is going to happen, and you need to plan for it. Also, we ended up, because funerals are so expensive and such, and money was tight, do a search on the internet, whole body donation. My mom had wanted to be an organ donor, but by the time you're in that condition, your organs are shot. They're not going to do anybody any good. But there's medical research, there's training of doctors learning how to do surgery and such, and you can donate your body for this purpose, and it's a wonderful thing to help people, the medical establishment. Yes, anyway, and it's free.
Thanks, Erik. So Anne Lucy Darling, who's speaking next, was born in Newcastle, New South Wales, Australia, in the last days of 1941 in the middle of World War II. In high school, she was not a great student, but loved art, dressmaking, chemistry, and biology. In 1959, she began 4 years of nursing school in Sydney and graduated in '63 with distinction. She then began a year-long postgraduate program in midwifery. Once education in nursing school was completed, she left Australia with 2 friends and set off to see the world. During the next 3.5 years, she traveled extensively, living and working in Great Britain, Italy, Eastern and Western Canada. In 1967, she didn't anticipate that boarding a small tour bus in Mexico City on Halloween Eve would change her life. Peter Darling was on that bus, his first ever foray outside of the U.S. Peter and Ann married in early '68 and lived in Tacoma since then. They would have celebrated 57 years together earlier this month. Ann has worked as both a registered nurse, midwife, and health educator for a total of 35 years. More recently, after completing parts of a program in clothing design, she has now set up a studio in her home to create clothing and accessories which she markets at local venues. Ann?
I'm really good at talking about travel, and this is a new topic for me. I would like to begin with a story that may confuse you. The year is about 1954. It's Christmas in Australia, and my mother was also a registered nurse. However, at that time, of course, married women could not work in hospitals, for goodness sake. So we are sitting around the Christmas lunch table. It's a hot Australian Christmas, and there are maybe 12, 14 people around the table. My mother didn't drink very much at all, except she really, really liked Sauterne wine, which is a white wine. And lots of chatter and food being eaten. And my mother stands up and said, I'd like to tell a story. I'd like to tell you a story about when Dr. Ostinger came into the ward when I was the nurse in charge. And Dr. Ostinger said, Nurse Brett, I have just completed a suprapubic cystotomy for the application of diathermy to a papilloma of the bladder, and he did very well in the surgery. And my mother sat down. You can imagine, there was dead silence at the Christmas lunch table. My father, who was a Scot, sort of looked over down at my mother and said, Mary? And she said, well, it's true. Of course, none of us had a clue what she was talking about. I use that as an illustration of what can happen when someone in your family dies. And you are suddenly faced with acronyms, processes, papers, people calling you, Erik talking about the, once the death certificate was, posted, the things that started to happen. So my part tonight, I hoped to help you think about what you might do when somebody in your family dies. And so I'm going to read this because I don't want to forget anything. I'm guessing that my story about my mother sounded like some kind of foreign language to your ears. But because I spent 35 years working in the healthcare field, it makes perfect sense to me. However, many of the new terms relating to the settlement of an estate and the tasks required may sound to you like this story of my mother. Suddenly, no matter how well prepared you thought you were to deal with the documents and the huge amounts of information coming your way, you have to submit to learning a new language. I envy the people who have been able to just get it done. I swear that learning all the acronyms for this new language makes it all a bit more challenging. When I spoke to our attorney following Peter's death, I asked why on earth this mountain of archaic terminology was still being used. His answer? I wondered the very same thing, he said, when I began practicing law 40 plus years ago. I believe it is a way of maintaining a degree of control by the people who are practicing law, None of the language has really changed in these 40 years, and you need to pay the attorney for the interpretation of the law. Talking with those closest to you, for whom you will be responsible, is crucial. But knowing who you can go to for assistance before facing all these new responsibilities is also crucial, but before a person dies. There are now people you can hire who are reliable, trained, some might call concierge-type providers who can assist you with this new role. For some people, paying someone experienced and professional is worth the fees. I think the microphone just went off, but I have a big voice. I checked with my financial advisor, who said she thought the average fee for those services today is about $75 an hour, and the people who employ such a person consider it worthwhile for the assistance that they are given. I have chosen to wade through the mire and ask for help when I need it. My accountant has turned out to be, my accountant has turned out to be the most encouraging and helpful person in many ways. He's one of there are no dumb questions people. Unfortunately, he is close to retirement, so I may have to learn somebody new, depending on the length of my life. The one thing that people may not know about, and I couldn't find a way to put this information in an appropriate way that might offend some people, is Washington is one of the states that has an end-of-life law. It is legal in this state to end your life when certain measures, for want of a better word, have been met. For example, a physician has to have determined it is probably that your life will probably end within 6 months. There are other quite stringent requirements to be met, and I would encourage you to research this if you believe it is something you may choose or someone close to you may wish to choose in the future. End-of-life Washington people are mostly volunteers, and if you have a group who'd like to learn more, they are wonderful resources to explain the process to you. I would like to know, just show of hands, how many people in the audience have had somebody in their life die recently? Yeah, I thought we would find that. I wonder how many of the people, and I'm not going to make you raise your hand, I don't want to embarrass anybody. I wonder how many of you have a will, a current will. Is that known to the people who are close to you? And do they know where to find not only your will, but all of your other documents? How many people who own an iPhone, this one I'm going to ask, how many people who own an iPhone here have a legacy contact already on their phone? Are you seeing? Do you understand, those of you who do not have a legacy contact, it is an easy thing to do. If you put onto the search engine on your iPhone, how do I establish a legacy contact on this phone? It will give you exactly how to do it, because the stories you hear of, but all their information was on the phone and I can't access it. And so how do you open the phone? I don't know about Android phones, so just to say that again, it's called creating a legacy contact, okay? I assume that Android phones have some kind of similar place to do that, but I'm not familiar with that information. Does everybody know what a power of attorney is? Do you know that you need a power of attorney for financial and personal matters, but you also need a power of attorney designated for medical care? If you haven't, please do so. I'm going to assume that everyone has a living will, which is a document that you need that relates how you would like things to play out at the end of your life in as much as a way that you can do. That is also the document that is required mostly these days when you go into the hospital. So most people are familiar with it now, but it's another one of those if you don't already have one. Okay, this is a hands up. How many people know what a POLST, a post form is? Oh, people. Post is a form, a green piece of paper like this that you need to take to your primary health care provider, and with that person work out the directions that you want on that post form. It needs to be posted visibly in your kitchen or someplace by the area where people, are coming and going, so that, say, somebody has a medical emergency, the fire department comes, the permission to treat you is there for them. Otherwise, you don't have control over what happens. Does anybody in the audience have a Go book in their house? I was going to bring mine up. Mine is orange, a 3-ring orange binder marked Kennedy Road Recipes. I live on Kennedy Road. In case it has a lot of private information in, but in case someone comes into your house and you didn't want them to have access to that information. And there is a list of items. I have a list of items that I would be happy to share with you, but just for instance, what should go into it? The phone numbers of your closest neighbors and your closest friends. Your children or another person close to you come to visit, some medical emergency happens, you need to talk to the next door neighbor. Where's the phone number? So that should be at the beginning of it. A list of the people close to you, also apart from neighbors and very physically close people, a list of the people close to you, their phone numbers, and if appropriate, email addresses, home addresses, and this applies to neighbors, friends, family, work associates, if you're still working. A copy of your birth certificate, a copy of a marriage certificate, if it is applicable. Where is your will? Where are your power of attorney documents? That also should be there. Bank account whereabouts and numbers relating to those accounts. Credit card numbers. Let me tell you a small credit card story. It is now a year since my husband died. I have about 3 months after he died, I called Puget Sound Energy to say, my husband is deceased. I need to take his name off the bill for the gas that comes to our house. What was the name and what was the address, said the person at the other end of the phone. And before I could finish the sentence, she said, right, I've just closed that account. And you are going to have to provide us with financial information and open another account. I mean, I was speechless. I said, you can't do that. And, they said, that is the rule. That's what we have to do. So be aware. I have a friend who lives in Kent whose parents have been gone for, I think she said 47 years. all the documents that come to her about the house that she lives in, which was her parents' house, still come addressed to her parents because she had a similar experience, 30 years ago. Back to the Go book, it needs to have investment. Oh, I have one other credit card story. So 2 weeks ago, I called Bank of America, which is the bank which carries, for all of you who have Alaska Airlines Mileage Plus cards, about a conflict of a charge that was not mine. And at the end of the conversation, I said to the young woman at the end of the phone, I'm just curious, I'm getting to an age. If my husband or I were to die, what would happen to the credit card? And she said, oh, who's the primary card holder? And I said, well, my husband is, I corrected myself, the primary card holder. Oh, she said, then we would just cancel the card. Be warned. Back to what should go in the Go book. Investment account information, your social security number and any other similar identifiers for your accounts, medical information that's important, medication lists of things that you are taking, medical care providers' contact information, how to access your iPhone, I'm a Macintosh user, so iPhone, iPad, computer. Do you have an entry code for your computer or your iPad? Do your family members know that? Utilities used in your home and maybe also any business that you have, and contact information or perhaps an old bill you might keep in that file so that you have the account number readily accessible. Contact information for any in-home assistance that you've been receiving. And if you have strong feelings about an obituary, a funeral, or a memorial celebration that you want to make sure those close to you have information about, your wishes, plans, or arrangements in place. An example of that would be Peter and I joined the People's Memorial Association years ago, and which is an organization that provides information for planning after death and various funeral homes in the area where you live who can provide services to you. It's a lot. And a year later, I'm still dealing with a lot. And the wonderful accountant that I mentioned earlier, about 3 months ago now, I had an appointment with him. And he reached into his drawer and he took out this rubber band that's around my wrist. And he said, I want you to put this on your arm. And every time your brain starts worrying, snap the rubber band, and it will remind you that A, you can do this, or B, there are people who will help you, and C, you can call me and I will help you find the people that you need. So I went around my neighborhood this week and collected rubber bands. I'm sorry I don't have enough for everybody, but please take one and put it on. And I'm not necessarily dealing with the death of somebody, but something that you're fussing and worrying and can't do anything about. Snap the rubber band. It may sound crazy, but it actually works. One other thing I wanted to say was, if you would like to have the list of the things that I, have in my to-go book. Oh, and it's so that if you need to take somebody, you're responsible for to the hospital or to an appointment. You have everything in one place. So if any of you would like a copy of that, I did bring a scratch pad with me, and if you put your email on there, I'd be happy to send you the list. Thank you. And the best ones are the ones that come around, asparagus and beans.
And that was fantastic. So it's really wonderful that people that have had a death, an important death that close to now, are willing to think about presenting a show like this. So we really appreciate it. When I knew we were doing this subject, I typed in what to do when people would die, and the ARP website came up, and it was 5 pages of the things you have to keep in mind. And I just want to say Anne's list was even longer than this. So if you're smart, you'll get on her email list so she can send you that fabulous list. Another thing is, a few months ago, I cut this out of the Seattle Times, and it's a 1-page story, what do you say when someone dies? And I only have this one copy, but if you want, I'm going to put it on the piano also, and you can take a look at it and take notes. Okay, now we're going to hear from Odessa Christiana, who's James Hume's wife and Ed Hume's daughter-in-law. And I want to introduce her. She's a multi-passionate creatrix. She's an artist, author, and entrepreneur. She adores mentoring creatives, guiding them to cultivate a healthy mindset while taking practical steps toward their dreams. With years of experience across various ventures, including fashion design and the short-term rental industry, Odessa brings a wealth of knowledge to her work. After a 12-year adventure of living in California with her husband, James Hume, she is thrilled to be back in her Pacific Northwest. Odessa enjoys long walks in nature and inspiring conversations with friends, old and new. Currently, she is channeling her energy into exciting collaborations that connect artists, local businesses, and the community in our beautiful city. Odessa.
Thank you, Lynn. I'm just going to turn on my voice memos here so I have an audio of myself. How's that for an idea? Okay. Can we just all take a breath? I saw that picture and I'm already crying. You know what? I think we all need to normalize tears, just like laughter. It's just another emotion. And I think a lot of us have just, we try to hold that inside, I got to keep myself together. This isn't okay to be sad or be emotional or whatever it is. And I'm just gonna let it out. This is emotional. We just heard some really great information, and I think my part is gonna be a little bit more just on grief and just being real and saying, it's really hard to lose somebody that you love. And I personally believe that they're still with us, that they're here, but when you can't give them a hug and you can't do the things with them that you used to do, it hurts really bad. So I want to introduce you to one of the most extraordinary women I have had the pleasure of meeting and knowing in my life. Thanks, honey. Am I not loud enough? Thank you. This is Myrna Lee Hume. Myrna was born on June 4th, 1938. Can you hear me okay? Okay. Oh, somebody said lights. When Myrna was born, she already had a sister waiting for her. This is her and her sister Carol. Carol was just a little bit over a year older than her. And I think they were immediately best friends and inseparable. We still have Carol with us today.
Lights.
Myrna, as a beautiful young woman there, with a couple of kitties. Some of you guys might recognize the gentleman there next to Myrna in the middle. He just happens to be here with us tonight, sitting here next to my husband in the front row. Myrna and Ed, I'm not sure, they met maybe when she was about 19, but they got married when she was 19 in 1958. And those are their parents on either side of them. I thought that was a really lovely picture. Everyone looks so happy. Myrna and Ed, somewhere tropical there. I thought that was such a cute picture. I love their headpieces. So Ed got into the gardening business and started his time on TV in the early to mid-60s. And Myrna jumped right in there as his biggest cheerleader and supporter. And they also started doing world tours. So they would take groups of people on tours, and they've been to so many amazing places all over the world. This is Myrna with Ed and her sister Carol, obviously having a really good time out there somewhere. Another beautiful picture. You guys, I have been going through hundreds and hundreds of photos over the past week or so, looking back at the Hume family's history, and it's been a lot of fun. I feel like I've been on a ride just going through the pictures, but it's also just stirred up a lot of emotion in me thinking about our lifetime and our youth that comes and goes and mortality and all the things that we're talking about tonight that need to be done. And it's a lot. Myrna with her family. So Myrna and Ed had 2 boys, James and Jeff. That's James in the middle there, this cute guy sitting in the front row with the hat. While Ed was enjoying his career on TV, Myrna came on, and she had, 12 years? A 12-year run, where in December, she would do a program called Deck the Halls, where she came on and showcased different things that you can do to decorate your home around the holidays for just things that you might have already around the house without a lot of expense. And that was such a popular show. There's Myrna and Ed there on, I think that one must have been the set of his show. There's one of the Ed Hume tours out there. Can you imagine being responsible for taking these groups of people all over the world? I guess you could have called her the creative director. So I've heard a lot of stories over the years from the family. And Myrna was just such a big energy. She was just a light. And she loved to have a good time. So when they would get to their first night, wherever in the world they were, generally Ed and Myrna would throw a little party, a little welcome party in their hotel room and pack all the people in there, give them some drinks, kind of warm them up so the people started to get to know each other a little bit because they were going to be on this trip for a while with each other. So they might as well start talking and break the ice. And Myrna would come up with games, and James and I were just talking about this the other night. One of her games was when everybody came through the doorway, she would put the name of a famous person on their back. And then that was part of the game over the course of the night. They had to guess who they were, so they would ask people questions. I think that sounds like a pretty fun party game. I'm sure that Ed and James have quite a story about this. I've heard something about a treacherous small aircraft where everyone was sick and afraid and they didn't think they were going to make it. But obviously they did. They lived to tell that story.
Well, those were skis, and we were on a mountain, Mount Cook.
Mount Cook.
Yeah, down in the south. When I say down in the south, should make it clear, we were down in Australia, New Zealand, and that region.
Oh, thank you, Ed. That's great. I love their matching outfits there. Myrna with her boys. I love this one here, how she's writing, Ed loves Myrna. That might give you a little bit of her personality there. Myrna loved theatrics. She loved costumes. She loved to dress up. And she loved to dress up other people, too. I have some pictures coming up of that. She also loved flowers and, of course, arranging them, decorating her home and the sort. These are the boys here, and James is the little astronaut riding in the UFO. I think, didn't this one make the front page of the paper somewhere? That was another one. Oh. So James has told me many times that all the kids in the neighborhood, from when they were little to when they were older and even after high school and everything, all the kids always wanted to come over to the Hume's house because Myrna was so much fun. And she was just always making some kind of magic. She would come up with something like, we're going to have a carnival. We're going to have magic tricks. We're going to do this. We're going to play games. We're going to have squirt gun fights. So this is just one of the floats that she made for the boys for a parade of some kind. Guessing that one's maybe Australia. Side note, my husband was in a popular heavy metal band in the early 80s. I think Myrna was one of his biggest fans, too. I love this picture. Couldn't resist, James. That's Myrna with Carol. That's pretty much how they were together most of the time. Just both so fun and merry, and Carol is just a laugh a minute, too. This is Myrna with Holland, James' son. They had a very, very special relationship. And Holland, when he found out that I was doing this presentation, he shared a little piece with me that I wanted to share with you guys about grief. He said that after Myrna passed, and he was trying to figure out how to process things, he said that someone explained to him that if you can imagine like a square with a ball in it and a pain button in there, the ball is the grief, and over time it gets smaller and smaller, but the pain button is still in there, and as the grief bounces around, sometimes it hits the pain button, but as it gets smaller, there's more space inside of the square. So sometimes it's fewer and further between. And so it gets a little bit easier, but it's always still there. And as you guys can see by my behavior tonight, it was, I guess my ball was hitting the pain button the past few days, and particularly in the past 24 hours or so. This is Ed and Myrna with their other grandchildren, Kelsey and Alex, Jeff's children. Now, this is an example of Myrna with her costume room. This was one of her art studios, and she was always curating so many wild things. There were always wigs and all kinds of wild clothes and paints, and she encouraged creativity and self-expression for all, and it was just so much fun. There are hundreds, if not thousands, of photos of the family wearing wigs and costumes, and I'm sure when she was I'm calling her the creative director of these excursions across the world, she would dress up everyone or do their face or makeup or what have you. Okay, so that strange thing that James is doing with his mouth there, that kind of is a family thing. So I've been in the family for about 17 years now. I still can't quite do that. I have to look in the mirror and really try to get my lips from one side to the other. But something about James and his mother and his aunt, they can just do that on demand. I think they must be part rubber or something. I don't know. This shows the relationship between Myrna and Holland a bit. They really had a very close and very, very funny and fond relationship. They just loved each other to pieces. Maybe you guys recognize the fellow in the pink wig there. Who is it? It's Ed. I bet Ed has been dressed up hundreds more times than he really wanted to be, but all in good fun. Myrna with her seeing eye. So there was a point in time where numerology came into Myrna's life. She got very, very interested in numerology. And when she would meet a new person, that was always the first thing that she wanted to do. And if you were a couple, she was bound and determined to find out your numbers and see if you two were actually supposed to be together and and good for each other. This is her with a few of her artist group. There was also a point in time where she was living, when they moved to the South Hill of Puyallup, she brought together a group of women, and they would do all kinds of art projects together, bring in different teachers and have drinks and paint and have fun and do all sorts of things together. Just an example of the fun with creativity, and you can see the garden and everything there coming together. So James just recently reminded me, this shows Myrna's behind the scenes of everything in Ed's career. So Hume Seeds were the first ones to have the black seed packets, which brought them a lot of popularity. And it was Myrna that took a white seed packet with a black marker, filled it in, and said, "See how the color pops on this? We should have black seed packets." That's gone over pretty well. I have a few pictures of her artwork here. She loved mixed mediums, and she loved to embellish things. This is a family favorite, this painting here of dahlias. And James' son had a granddaughter, Dahlia. She was named Dahlia. There's stories about all those pictures, but I think Lynn's probably going to ring the bell on me pretty soon here, so I'll try to finish up. This is little Dahlia, and this is at her baptism. Holland married a beautiful Japanese woman named Ayudi, and that's her holding little Dahlia there in the picture. Myrna with her sister Carol. We were always clowning around. There you go. It's the face. Oh, the fun just never stopped. Here's Ed and Myrna on their 60th. Here's an art project that was my husband's brilliant idea. The family came down to visit us in California probably about a year, or maybe it was actually just a few months before Myrna passed away. I don't think we quite knew that how sick she was yet. And James wanted us to all paint our hands and get our hands on this canvas. And we had a really great time doing this. And then Myrna embellished everyone's hands and things, and we still have this canvas today. I think, taking a moment to just think about little things that you might do like that with your loved ones, something that you can remember later. I was not sure if I wanted to show this one because it's so personal, but I just wanted to show and share everyone. These were some of the last moments here. This was the last day of Myrna's life, and it took her a while to go out. We sat with her for about 3 days there at the end, and she just didn't quite want to go. She was kind of mentally gone, but the body was just taking a while. And it was a process for all of us. But the family was all there together, and we had each other to talk to cry with, to laugh with. And that support was really, really profound and important. I just love this photo so much. And this one. So if there's anything that I can say of great importance that, taking a page out of Myrna's book is that she was never afraid to talk about the end, to talk about dying with family, friends, anybody. And I think another thing, kind of like sharing tears, a lot of us are just afraid to go there. We don't want to talk about it. We don't want to think about it. But it's something that is a part of life. It's just a part of life. And I think, like the Native Americans were mentioned earlier, I think they're really good about honoring this cycle of life. And I just think that maybe we should all, if we can take anything home tonight to our families, is just to open up the conversation and not be afraid to talk about the hard things. Because the more we open up and can talk about the hard things, the less hard they are. And then we can start to work together to put together all the pieces that the other two presenters, Erik and Ann, were talking about to make things a little bit easier on those of us that are still here after we lose the love of our life. Thank you.
And Erik? So I want to introduce Cynthia Zink. Do you want to come up here? She's a certified grief recovery method specialist who is currently working with small groups, providing a space for folks who are in the grieving process to gather together and share how they are feeling, and just be surrounded by others who understand that sometimes we all need a place to be heard and seen. She also provides an 8-week course that allows the grieving person to process their feelings of grief which can aid in their healing journey. So this is Cynthia. So she might be helpful in answering questions. You know, there are chairs. Do you guys want to get chairs? Are you okay? Okay. So who has a question?
Mario, do you have a question?
Well, what, why don't we just start off with I'm sorry. All I could see was green. What do you do? Yeah, that's the first question.
Can you hear me okay?
No, but you soon will be.
So what I'm doing mostly now is working with small groups to allow people to come together and just be able to talk about their grief. Because there's a lady in one of my groups here in Tacoma that her mother has passed away 3 years ago, and she knows that she could no longer talk to her friends about it because they're tired of listening to her. But she comes to the group because it does give her a place to share her feelings yet, and she knows that the people there understand it. And that's my main purpose. That's really the love of what I do the most. I also do an 8-week, as Lynn said, an 8-week program that helps people work through it over an 8-week period.
Aren't you doing twice now?
I do one here, I do a couple in Des Moines, and I do one, I'm a member at Genesis CSL in Burien, and we have one online there that we do once a month. Yeah.
Just a quick question about that. How do you, it's going to be too hard to probably say except in simple generalities, how do you help someone through an 8-week thing about grief?
There's a process that was worked out by John James, couldn't think of his name, like 45 years ago. He actually had lost a child like 3 days after it was born and had all these weird things being said to him. And he said, there's got to be a better way. One of the things that somebody said, oh, thank goodness you and your wife are still young, you can have another one. You know, and so there's things that you say that you think you're being nice, right, or comforting, but it's not. And I was going to say, I have a list that I happen to bring along tonight of the 10 best things and the 10 worst things you can say to grievers. It's put together by a man named David Kessler. I don't know if you're familiar with him, who has done grief work for years. So just letting them talk, though in the small groups that I do, is the biggest thing. I have things on chairs too.
Can I, it's not a good thing to piggyback on somebody, but it's amazing to me always how throughout life, I'm now 83, something said will trigger something from a long time ago. And in 1972, Peter and I had a baby who was born prematurely and died. And I'll never forget the woman who said to me, God never gives us anything we can't deal with.
I would like to address this to the woman on the left. That's you. You left out a very important option. If your assets are worth anything beyond your life, then you should create a living trust. You don't die. Your living trust takes your assets. Now, if you don't understand a living trust, I can give you the name of my lawyer.
I have a living trust. Thank you. thank you for,
Yeah, it's working. Ronald,
no.
a little more volume, Ronald?
Thank you for bringing that up. My husband and I made a trust many years ago, and I have friends here in the audience tonight who set the example for us some years ago by establishing a trust. So yes, and part of the challenges for me. Is that right? Yeah, he just got a new.
Too loud
Right.
on this.
It went away.
Part of the challenge? Talking to that money.
Right, is we have a small commercial building that I now get to manage, and it's challenging. So it doesn't matter how small the things are, it's just, and I think no matter how well you prepare, the simplest but most direct wham in the face was the woman at the Bank of America saying to me, "Oh, well, we'll just cancel the account." And I was like, oh, and I know what else I said to her. And so what about the mileage points that we have connected with that account? Oh, no, she said they'll be gone also. But you could talk to Alaska Airlines about them.
Another thing that happened with related is my mom had a car and a loan on the car, and the registration on the car expired. They absolutely, positively, unquestionably would not allow me to renew the registration on the car because my name wasn't on the title. And I went to the bank and said, well, gee, Mom's dead. Can you put my name on the title? And they said, oh, no, sorry, we can't do that until it's been paid off. So I can't legally drive the car. And I can't change anything. It's a double bind. It's just absolutely ridiculous.
Didn't you forge your mother's name?
Yeah, well, not really. Maybe, well, no, because it's...
Is that not a good question?
Well, no, that's a perfectly fine question, but the problem is, it's in the system. They have the death certificate, their registration's no longer valid, so you're stuck. The other way with the frozen bank account, what I suggest people do, and this is just personal opinion, I'm not at all qualified to give financial advice or anything, but for instance, the safe deposit box. Mom had a safe deposit box, and one day she picked me up and said, oh, you're going to go help me do something, and it was all very mysterious. But we went to the bank where her safety deposit box was, and she put my name on that card as a co-signer for the box, so that after she passed, we could still get access to the box. If she hadn't done that, we wouldn't have been able to get into it without going through a whole bunch of legal procedures. And I also suggest doing something similar with a bank account. Set up a separate bank account. Maybe make it be a business account or something like that. Something that you can still access. That anybody who needs to be able to access it can access it without it being tied to a specific person who, once they die, it'll be frozen. I suspect with a joint account, it won't be a problem. But if you've got a single individual, like Mom, it was just her own personal bank account, nobody else on there, then I couldn't access it. But there's a flip side to that. At one point, my sister had actually put her name on my mom's bank account. And then she realized that if her name's on there and Mom passes away, she's going to be liable for Mom's debts. So she took her name off again. It should be a completely separate account. You don't want anything that has debt associated with it. So, okay.
Can I finish something on that?
I just wanted to ask her how she got started.
finish on what Erik said. It's called a joint account with right of survivorship. So you can go and talk to your bank, and you should always have somebody who is a co-signer on like a check account or a bank account, but talk to the bank about having a joint account with a right of survivorship so that the person who is living can use the account.
And do you want to know how I got started? After my husband died, my friend, and actually your friend too, Linda Watson, told me about the grief recovery method. And that is a program that they train you to do the process, to do this 8-week course. But I could have gone farther on the other question. What you do is you actually go through and walk through all the losses that you have had in your life. And not only losses through death, but losses through, I don't know. I always use the one, if I wouldn't have been able to pass going up a step in the band, that would be a loss when I didn't get to forward to first clarinet instead of second clarinet. Or even losing a part in a play. Or a lot of us here, as we age, we're losing our health. And a lot of people move into retirement homes, so they lose their home that they're used to for 40 years. So there's a lot of losses that we have in our life that we don't always look at. So it's just learning to be able to identify them and then be able to work through them. And somebody said, I just heard this yesterday, a lady was talking about her husband dying and that she remarried. And she says, you know, everybody was telling me I needed to move on, I needed to move on. And she says, I don't believe in moving on. I believe in moving forward. And I thought, what a great way to look at it. Because having been married to this man, she became the person that she was, and then she remarried. And her second husband married her because she had become a different person than when she had first married him. So it's always, we are always becoming new people. And a lot of times we push down, and I think this is a cultural thing, a lot of times we push down our feelings because we're told, oh, get over it. This is just part of life. You know, your dad's gonna die, your mom's gonna die. I was fortunate, my parents lived in 96 and 97. So they were both ready to go. But what Grief Recovery Method does is it helps you identify your losses, to pick out the ones that are the major ones for you, and then you go through and you find ways that you can ask for forgiveness, that you feel you need forgiveness. You can say, I'm sorry to the person that has died. And just being able to talk and to witness, have somebody witness your feelings is very healing in itself. And that's what the whole 8-week course does, is it gives you that time to get to know other people and be willing to share with them, to feel safe with them, and to know that it's okay to say what you need to say. I told Erik this yesterday, and he didn't use it, so I'm going to use it now. My favorite quote for grief is, do you remember? Grief is love with no place to go. And that's the one I use the most, because it's short and easy to remember.
Can I say something? Can you guys hear me okay?
For the YouTube, you have to record.
Oh, okay. All right, thank you. This gentleman here that brought up the trust, the living trust, I just want to say thank you for that. And we were just with some good friends a couple of days ago, and we had a lengthy discussion about trust versus will. And I think that if you're in a position where you need to be looking at one or the other or both, which all of us do, and you don't already have the things, a good thorough Google search or maybe a call to your attorney would be in order, because he definitely had a point about that. And if you do have assets like rental properties and things, as they do, and you want those to easily transfer to someone, a living trust is definitely in order.
Thank you very much.
Any more questions?
Could I add one more thing? Only Just one more thing. There's an unfortunate aspect that can also take place. When my grandparents died, their children fought over the money. And one person made off with the lion's share of it, and a lot of bad feelings were around. And then when my uncle died, the uncle that was married to the aunt that you saw the funeral of, the cousins got into a huge war to where they stopped speaking to each other. So when my mother died, I talked to my sister and I said, we absolutely, positively are not going to do that. Our friendship is the only thing that's important. The money is not important. We will make mutual decisions, but our relationship with each other comes first. And that's something that's, I think, is well worth thinking about, because it's pointless. Mom was really upset. Well, I said one thing, but Mom was really obsessed with her jewelry and spending lots of money. She thought of it as an investment. No, it has no resale value whatsoever. And the furniture, oh my gosh, I went to an estate sale to get an idea of what it would be like. $20 for a dining room table and 4 chairs. This stuff has no resale value. And so to be fighting over money is just ridiculous. So, okay, thank you.
So thank you, everybody, for this really interesting evening. The next tripod is 3 photographers, and it'll be April 18th, which is the third Friday as usual. And if you can handle it, I want to tell you one more story that might be a little humorous. A few days ago in the Seattle Times, there was a story about a woman who answers her telephone. It's a call from the Bank of America. And she said, I'm just alerting you. First of all, I'm sorry your husband died. Did anybody see this story? I'm sorry your husband died. And she said, wait a minute, he's standing right here. Where did you get that information? And she said, well, Social Security just took away your last 2 months of payments to him because the government has been going through the Social Security rolls and taking off deceased people, and they determined for some reason that he was deceased. So he called Social Security. Has anybody here ever done that? Called Social Security? Yes, you can be on the phone for hours, and then after 3 hours, they just disconnect you. So this guy spent a few months, I guess, trying to get his Social Security back. And finally, he had to go down to a Social Security office where there were people lined up practically around the block for 2 tellers. And he finally just forced his way into the beginning of the line, like really rude, and said, I have got to have my Social Security back. So beware. Thank you, everybody. Thank you. So sign this sheet if you want Ann to send you that list.